Hey guys, my name is Mitsumiyo, and today I decided to play some Rainbow Six Siege on console. This has been something that I've been wanting to do for a really long time now. I've heard that it plays very different compared to the PC version. It's basically a different experience, and for the most part, that's actually the case. The first thing that I quickly discovered is that, well, first of all, you guys vote kick really quickly. I cannot tell you how many times either myself or a teammate was in a 1v1 or just won a 1v3 situation. We actually came out on top, and then someone initiated the vote kick on the player. Thankfully, it didn't really actually happen. It wasn't successful half the time. But I also had a moment where I joined a game, and even before I saw what map we were playing on, they kicked me to the lobby. I guess it was like a 4-man team that didn't want to have any randoms. Like, it's very bizarre. I don't know what it is about the console version. I don't experience this at all on PC, but it was very jarring to see that constantly popping up. Other than that, though, the real thing I noticed a lot was that positioning matters a ton on console. Now, I'm not saying that positioning doesn't matter on PC. I mean, obviously it does, but because you have to have, or at least for me, I need to have a lower sensitivity to be able to actually maintain my accuracy, which you guys are gonna notice really didn't matter a whole lot. Even with a low sensitivity, I was having a hard time lining up my shots. But because I needed to have that low sense, it was very difficult for me to be able to whip around and retaliate when someone was behind me. And so having a good position on the map and knowing where people were going to be hitting me from was very advantageous. Once I kind of came to grips with that, I was actually fairly successful. One thing I really enjoyed about this entire experience, though, was that a lot of the people that I was going against and were on my team were clearly new to Rainbow Six Siege, and it really brought me back to what I loved about the release of the game. That discovery, trying out new tactics that may not really work. One thing I noticed a lot of people using were barricades. People loved using barricades. It didn't matter where you were, it didn't matter if it made any sense. If there was a way for you to barricade yourself into a room, people were going to use that. And that was the thing that I kind of miss about Siege. Players have effectively optimized the game, if that makes any sense. We know all the different angles. We know the right strategies that work. And while people are still trying new things, it's definitely not what it was at the very beginning, obviously. And that sense of discovery has kind of been lost. Now, that does kind of get rekindled at the beginning of a new season if they introduce new operators and we have a new map to play on, but by and large, the game has been optimized, if that makes sense, by the players themselves. And so to go back and play with a bunch of new people was oddly refreshing. It felt like a trip down memory lane. It really brought me back, and so I have to say that this is probably my favorite part about this entire experience. Another thing I noticed after a while is that players, at least on PlayStation 4, hardly ever use their microphones. Now, this could be the fact that I was playing casual, I wasn't at higher tiers in ranked, and so maybe the ranked experience is vastly different, but hardly anyone was actually communicating. This was definitely a stark contrast to the PC side of things. Even on casual on PC, people are constantly talking. Casual actually has some callouts every once in a while, but that just simply wasn't the case for my console experience. Now, the one thing I can think of for why this is the case is that there's no push to talk on console. I could be wrong, I checked the settings and I didn't see one, but if I had the option to actually talk on console, I wouldn't want my microphone to always be on. And when players did have their microphones on, I actually promptly muted them because they usually had music on in the background and I didn't want to listen to their muffled music the entire time. Obviously, this is kind of a big deal. Communication is very important. If you have a squad that is actually making callouts to one, even if they're at a higher skill level, they're probably going to be more successful. Having that information is incredibly valuable. And so it really makes me hope that Ubisoft is considering eventually adding in an improved ping system like something like Apex Legends. Having the ability to make a call out like let's push in or defend the objective or fall back or something like that, where you could communicate through your operator and they would make the call out or something along those lines. I think that that would be an amazing addition. Even I don't have an actual microphone headset, and so I wasn't even able to make callouts. And so from my standpoint, I would have loved to have had something like that at my disposal. Now I realize it can't be an easy task to implement something like this into Rainbow Six Siege. How do you go about it? Do you bring in the old voice actors to make the callouts with the actual operators that they're playing as? Like, that's going to take a lot of time and resources for them to do it properly. But I think if they did it well, especially for people that don't have access to a mic or just simply don't want to use it, I feel like this would be a huge improvement, especially for the console version. At least that was what I kind of took away from this. One thing that kind of took me by surprise, and I don't know if I just got really lucky, is that I didn't really have any problems with team killing whatsoever. I personally, in my 8 to 10 hours playing, didn't get purposely TK'd once. Like I said, this may have just been pure luck, but it wasn't an issue whatsoever. The reason why I say this is that from what I've heard, this is kind of a nightmare right now on console. I get constant questions for Sunday Mailbox basically saying that Ubisoft needs to do more about the TK problem because it's completely ruining their experience. It's stopping them from wanting to play Rainbow Six Siege. And so going into this, I was expecting that this was going to be something I was going to have to deal with from the very beginning, but that wasn't really the case. That said though, I did notice it more on the enemy team. It was really bizarre. So like my teams never TK'd, but the other side was constantly doing, it was a weird contrast. So I don't know if it was just because our side wasn't being negative to begin with, and then the other team, it was kind of cycling. I noticed this trend where one person would TK and then another person would doing it. And then the next round, it would just kind of compound on itself. And that would happen over and over. But for some reason, it never really happened on my end. And so I feel like I just kind of got lucky, but it was a pleasant surprise. It was a surprise nonetheless. Another thing I eventually noticed is that shotties are incredibly powerful. Because obviously my aim is terrible, having a weapon that doesn't require pinpoint-like precision, I don't need to get a headshot with it, I just need to kind of get in the general area of where the enemy is located, having something like that was quite valuable. Now I wouldn't go as far to say that they are the best weapon type, they still have their weaknesses, and people that were good with their aim were still able to take me out no problem, but it definitely eased me in to what the console experience was all about. Another thing that really helped me out early on were the trap operators. Frost and Capcan in particular were a godsend. Like, they are really strong. Now, I don't know if this is simply because a lot of people that were playing were new, like we talked about, but even people that were like gold 2 and casual were still falling for these things. I don't know if that's simply due in part because of the slower, clunkier controls. I don't want to misspeak here, but it really just felt like the console version was a bit slower in pace compared to PC. You didn't have like the precision of a mouse and keyboard, and so things were slowed down significantly, and so maybe that's why people were getting taken out by these gadgets a lot more. I'm not entirely certain, but what I do know is that they were very effective as a newer player. The final thing I wanted to bring up today is whatever happened to buying the base game of Rainbow Six Siege and getting all of the original operators for free. I remember this being a big deal a year ago. A lot of people were getting fatigued because the game had so many unlocks, there were all these operators that you had to achieve, and so Ubisoft finally relented, and I thought that by buying the game from here on out, you got all of the original operators unlocked at the very beginning. But that doesn't seem to be the case on console. Maybe this was just a PC thing. I remember that there was the starter edition and then there was like the deluxe edition, but I definitely didn't buy the starter edition on console. At least I didn't think I did because I got the year 1 operators unlocked for free. I don't know what's going on here. And so who knows, maybe I just did something wrong on my end, I'm not entirely certain. But if this is actually the way that it works, first of all, why would you go back and require everyone to unlock them again? But also, this just seems like needless grind. Maybe one argument that you could make is that it eases newer players into what Rainbow Six Siege is all about. If they're overwhelmed with 20 operators, I guess 10 on each side, that's not really overwhelming, but I guess you could say that it might be too much all at once, and so the slow trickle of unlocking them with Renown is one way to kind of ease those new players in. but I don't really buy that, especially with the excessive amount of renown that you need for the DLC content. Having people, or at least giving people those base operators for free, doesn't seem like it would be that big of a deal. I don't really know why Ubisoft has made this decision. Once again, it might just be something on my end, but I'd really hope that they would reconsider if this is actually the case. Overall, though, I had a lot of fun with my time on console. It was rough, I will admit it was quite difficult, but once I got a handle on things, and especially experiencing the game with a bunch of new people, was an absolute blast. And I could honestly see myself playing this more and more, at least on my off time, because it just really was its own unique experience. Yeah, guys, that has been it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about what we discussed in today's video. Would you like Ubisoft to try to improve the communication or give players more tools to communicate on console? Do you think that's a good or bad idea? Let me know down below in the comments. Yeah, guys, until next time, have a good one and take it easy.